Jack Mitchell, the Groin Kick Chronicles are finally here. You have been tweeting about groin kicks for almost a decade now. This is very odd to finally be talking about this. How are you?
I always thought it would make some kind of a great documentary. I just didn't think we were going to be the ones who made it and basically wrote the script to it with our experiences over these years. So here we are. It's time to delve into our pain, Josh.
Yes, and especially your pain. One of the fun things that we're going to have over the course of the next handful of episodes are going to be tweets from you about every single game, and we are ranking 70 games, and we're going to talk in just a couple of moments about how we're doing this, why we're doing this. But one of the fun parts about putting together the list of tweets from you is, I mean, you kind of lay out the project for us 5 years ago, 6 years ago. There's one game in particular where you said historians will point to the real beginning of this era beginning sometime around November of 2014. And I think that's kind of what we ultimately decided upon.
Yep. And I think at one point during the tweets you'll hear I said the 30 for 30 on this is going to be amazing. And it's still maybe better than this. But yeah, the amount of, you remember when you're like junior high, English teacher taught you about foreshadowing when you were reading a book?
Yeah.
As I read through my tweets over these games, I could see the foreshadowing, like the sense of impending doom when you're watching a horror movie or you're reading a book like that. And it's right there in the tweets, man. It's all out there.
Yeah, it certainly is. So, I mean, the first question that I imagine a lot of people are going to want to know is why? Why are we doing this? Why are we delving into this? The idea came to us at the end of last season, at the end of the 2024 season. We were doing a post-game show following another loss for Matt Rule and company against USC. And you began the podcast. I mean, we're only, a few minutes in, and you're suddenly laying out, oh man, this game has all of the hallmarks of the groin kick era. And it just, something snapped together for both of us as we were like, well, wouldn't it be fun to kind of rank the last X number of losses? And that is pretty much what we decided to do.
Yeah, because any Husker fan knows who's been through the groin kick era is that at some point we learned this sort of familiarity with the ride that we were on, and it almost became like a deja vu experience with every game. Like, I've already been through this. I know how this ends. I've seen this movie before. There's probably 80 tweets where I say I've seen this movie before. And you realize that during the game, and you can start saying, okay, now this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, in fact, this didn't end up being a groin kick game, but I even said it during the bowl game against Rutgers. I was like, okay, well, here's where the special teams gaffe comes. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, the next play,
literally a blocked punt against Boston College.
It starts to feel like you've seen the future. You're a prophet at some point, and we've all experienced this. And so what I wanted to do was, number one, because it had become so familiar, I wanted to kind of quantify and explain what had become familiar, what the elements are that brought about that familiarity, and sort of see, hey, it feels like these happen in all these games. Mm-hmm. Did this really happen in all these games? And then sort of say, okay, which ones, though, were the most characteristic? Which ones had the most of these elements that we identified before? And then you kind of took over in quantifying the whole thing.
Yeah, and so over the course of the last, 6 months, we would talk about it on and off. We wrote some scripts for it, and then we got a ton of help, at the end of March, early April, from a few of our subscribers, and they'll get credited at the end of every single episode. And they helped me in particular put together how this would work mathematically. Because for the longest time, Jack, I kind of thought, all right, let's come up with 10 categories. We'll just do a 1 to 10 scale. I'll plug the numbers in. It'll spit out some sort of ranking. Easy peasy. Well, it's not as easy as that, as I certainly came to understand it. And so they did a great job in kind of how we were able to do this. And so we ended up with 7 categories. And so we'll go through those categories. And if people want to look back at this for every episode, it will be on huskermax.com. So people can kind of see, okay, these are the things. This is what went into the formula. And so we put all that in, and it spat out a ranking for all 70 of these games.
And before we delve into those, the other reason that at least I have, and maybe you have some thoughts on this too, but I know when this is released and this goes public and hopefully goes wild and is incredibly popular, you're going to have some haters out there, some naysayers who are, essentially calling us haters, mm-hmm. that will think the reason that we did this was to take joy right, in the failure of the program or the people who were involved, or the failure of the people who were involved,
coaches, players,
in these losses, the coaches and the players. And for me, at least, I'm not going to speak for you, but for me, that's not at all my motivation. I want to try and fully explain to people who weren't embedded in it, and I know most of the people who will listen were embedded in it, but to those of you who are only embedded in part of it, those of you who are listening from a place other than Nebraska, you're not a fan, I want to be able to have on record in history, because I don't know if this will ever happen again. I want people to understand how bad it was. I will tell you what, if you weren't a part of it, you don't know how bad it was. And when you've been through an almost comically painful experience that changes who you are, and you might think I'm being over serious about this, but it's changed how we at least watch football, at very least. It's made me a weirdo when it comes to football, as you'll see throughout the course of this series, that I continue. I mean, I'm constantly analyzing my own emotions and trying to prevent the worst pain possible. And so when an event happens like that, and people only see the end result, right?
Yeah.
They see you acting like a weirdo, or they see you acting in a way that isn't normal. You're like, what's the deal with this guy? And you're like, well, come over here. I'd love to tell you.
Take a look at these games.
Why are you the way that you are? Well, let me tell you, I've been through something that you can't imagine. In fact, imagine the worst sports experience I could have been through. You have in your head? Okay. Multiply it by 100,000 now. And that's what I've been.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to rank the last 100,000 losses that you have taken. No, we decided on a list of 70 games. And why 70 games? I mean, we kind of hit on it right before you and I started talking. Nebraska beats Iowa in overtime in 2014, Bo Pelini's last game. He gets fired over the weekend. Nebraska since then has lost 70 times. They've gone to overtime 8 times. 0 first downs. No first downs in a single overtime period. And the first game after it was a loss to USC in a bowl game by 3 points. That kind of fits the groin kick numbers. I mean, as you're going to see coming up perhaps in our first episode, that one's going to be low on the totem pole. What happens the next year? They lose to BYU on the Hail Mary, and kind of all bets are off after that moving forward. So that is why we decided on that time frame. Okay, so now when you're looking forward, you say, how do you figure out how to rank these games? And we wanted to make this as mathematical as possible. We wanted it to be as objective as possible. And so that's why we put together a list of 7 categories that we're going to kind of split these games up with. A couple of them are pretty basic. A few of these things are pretty basic. The opponent, for example. A Colorado game, you hate them more, you hate Iowa more than you hate Georgia Southern. Now, maybe you learn to hate Georgia Southern a little bit more in 2022 because they beat Nebraska. But a Colorado loss, an Iowa loss, a Wisconsin loss always is going to hurt more than a loss to, Michigan State or Maryland or something like that.
It just means more factor.
Correct.
Which is hard to do in, you were just talking about how you wanted to make it essentially numbers that are quantifiable.
Yeah.
It's a little hard because that's a bit subjective.
Correct. That was the hardest one in terms of trying to figure out how do we make sure that this, fits maybe how the average Husker fan feels. Because, I mean, you know it, Jack, and there's going to be a tweet that shows up along these lines that says it. Iowa, for some people, I think you and I agree, this is obviously a rival. Other people, well, actually, that it's not Oklahoma in the 1970s. But we gave Iowa, we gave Colorado, we gave Wisconsin. Those teams were a 5 out of 5. And the other part of the opponent formula, we took a look at how good these teams were based off of Bill Connolly's SP Plus numbers. And so we actually put more weight on the worst teams. And so if you were a worst team that beat Nebraska, that was going to bump you up a little bit more than a really good Ohio State team in 2019, for example. You lost a really good team. Congratulations.
Devastating losses to Northern Illinois, Georgia Southern, you mentioned. I mean, listen, we can name them, right? They were sickening in their own way.
Yes, absolutely. So that is the first part of our formula. The second part of our formula is the importance of the game. And you're saying, what does that mean, importance of the game? We put together a 1 to 10 scale where we applied the number 1 to, for example, a loss that comes after a win. So it's not a X loss in a row. It's the first loss right after a win. But then that number continues to climb. A third straight loss to a team, or a loss to a ranked team. Maybe a loss that keeps you out of bowl contention, which is we're going to talk about through the course of this series. Jack, is going to come up quite a bit. Overtime losses. And so we put the game importance in there in terms of, I mean, you really see it in seasons like 2018, 2017, when they're losing 2, 3, 4, 5, and sometimes 6 games in a row. And so that was the game importance scale.
So it kind kind of feels like it measures a combination of the gravity and desperation of the moment combined.
Yes, and you'll see that especially with some of those Iowa losses when they're 5-6 going into the game, and 2015 that would have made them 6-6. Now they went to a bowl that year, but that one still hurt. Certainly 2019, that one kept them out of a bowl, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the game importance.
Okay,
and then a couple of fun ones, if you will. Post-game win probability.
I'm not sure anything's... The way you're using fun right now is probably not accurate in terms of the way I understand that word, but okay, go ahead.
And trying to kind of distill this down into something as simplistic as possible. If you took every single play inside of the game and then you shuffled them in random order, how often would the team be expected to win? And so funny enough, Jack, there are some of these games that show up in here where Nebraska's post-game win expectancy is like 5%, but they lost by like a touchdown. But that's because like Ohio State, for example, in 2024. They kind of dominated on a play-by-play basis, even if Nebraska had a lead in the fourth quarter.
Right. Okay.
So that's what the post-game win expectancy. Okay. Now, if that was fun for you, Jack, let me dial it up just a little bit.
Well, that was really fun.
How about the max second-half win probability? Think of games like 2018 Northwestern, when Northwestern is 99 yards away from tying the game and forcing overtime with like 2 minutes to go, and you know that graphic that we love seeing on ESPN where it suddenly drops? Mm-hmm. Yeah, games like that. How good of a chance, or what was that max chance for Nebraska winning in the second half, and what happened when it crashed?
Okay.
So that's that one. The margin of defeat. And this one, kind of like the game importance, where if you lost to a good team, we're not going to punish you as much. Margin of defeat, certainly, we're going to put the maximum groin kick pain at the 1 to 3 point loss scale. But also, we wanted to give a little extra credit to a team that beat Nebraska by 40 or more points. So that happened in there as well.
I mean, it's kind of like a bell curve to some degree.
Yes.
If it's super close or a huge blowout, I don't know what the best amount of points to lose to a team
most palatable loss? 17
12,
points?
12? 15, I don't know what it is, but I think that makes sense to do it that way. So close games and blowouts. All right, what else we got?
Kind of along those lines, the total yard disparity. Did Nebraska actually outgain their opponents and lose? I mean, that's a real big bummer. Think of last year's loss. Jack, you remember the loss to Iowa last year?
Oh,
yeah.
Is that in this?
It might show up.
I hadn't thought about it.
It might show up in August when that episode is released, a couple of months from now. So the total yards disparity, and that is another bell curve one where you outgain a team, you get rocked, and you get outgained by 200 yards or whatever it is. Those are going to have more importance.
But the primary function of that is it felt like they should have won the game.
Correct.
But something intervened.
Correct.
That was outside of the norm of gaining yards. The primary, well, it's not about yards, it's about points, man. But the yards obviously go toward that success on offense and defense.
Yes. And then finally, and this goes back to the second half win probability or the post-game win probability. Late game shift. That moment in time. The moment where everything changed.
I mean, I have dubbed it. Now, this is another of the nomenclature. You didn't put it on here, but I have for about 5 years called this the oh shit moment, right?
Yes.
You know when it happens in every Nebraska. You can't quite describe it, but you know when it happens because you can feel it in here.
Yeah.
Right when it happened. Your stomach drops out. The onside kick against Northwestern.
Bingo.
The block punt against Iowa.
Bingo.
I mean, you can...
The punt return against Michigan State.
Punt return against Michigan State. The fumbled punt against Iowa. You know, as soon as it happens, everything has changed.
Yes.
And we have gained an ability to identify this moment with unbelievable accuracy. We've been granted superpowers.
We really have.
Are they the kind of superpowers that you want? No, but let's at least brag about them a little bit since we've got them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So get ready for some of those because they are certainly going to show up over the course of this exercise. I imagine, Jack, that there would be some people out there who are saying, hey, you guys missed X, Y, and Z.
I'm sure we did. Yeah.
As objective as possible, I think that we did a pretty good job of putting together a formula that decided where these games go.
There's no perfect measure, and I haven't seen what the rankings according to this formula will be. And so I might think the formula that we created. Now, I kind of helped in the non-numeric part of the formula, just some brainstorming about it. But Josh retired to the nerdery with the nerds, and he actually went and crunched the numbers and figured all of this out. And so I'm kind of having it revealed to me throughout the process of recording this podcast.
Yeah. Before we get into the episodes, what games are you expecting to see near the top of this ranking? I mean, there's the pretty obvious ones that I imagine everyone is thinking is going to be. Maybe you even have a guess for number one. I'd be curious as to what your guess for number one would be.
We've talked about this before, and I'm always afraid that I'm saying this because of recency. It was literally the last regular season game, but man, I did the podcast where I set up what the groin kick era looks like after the USC game, but it probably fit better after that Iowa game in 2024. So that's got to be up there. I think 2021 Iowa has got to be up there.
The 4 Milt game.
Yeah, the 4 Milt game. I actually think. Now, I don't know. It's hard to predict them. I have a better time reading for me what the ones that come to mind.
Sure.
First are for me. Another one that comes to mind right at the beginning for me, this might be one that people might not think of, but 2016 Wisconsin always comes up for me. The overtime game, Wisconsin misses the extra point. Westerkamp gets brutally interfered with, and they don't call it. That would be another one for me that comes up. The Michigan game in 2021.
Good one.
That's another one. So those are ones I think that are kind of, if the formula works for me, I think those ones that I just mentioned should all be. And then the other one that I'll mention too is Wisconsin. I got to get the year right, but the Janovich game.
2015.
Right?
Mike Riley's for sure.
Yep,
Yeah.
Janovich game against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That would be another one I would put in there. I would hope that all of those games are within the top 10 or very close to it.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to doing that. You said it at the start of this. We are not doing this out of joy in our hearts. We're not putting this together because
we're not trying to make a point about the program or team. We're trying to make a point about the fans.
Yeah, and so this has been something that you have been saying for years. And as we finish up, I wanted to ask you, groin kick. Why was that the term that you used? What do you remember why this came to your mind? Because, as I scoured over your tweets, it just kind of random appearances of the word groin, but not groin kick. And then suddenly,
I hope there weren't too many.
Starting in about 2015-ish, that's when you start referring to it as this experience, as this era that is happening for Nebraska football.
I guess that phrase has typically been used as gut punch by a lot of people, right? It's they got a gut punch. That's frequently, but to me, that's not dramatic. Listen, I don't know. I've probably been punched in the gut, but not a lot for real. But I have taken, it hasn't necessarily been a kick, but something like it.
Bicycle.
And I've got a much better, if I am thinking about the quick onset of unbelievable pain that.
It goes into your stomach.
Yeah, it radiates throughout your body.
Yeah.
And, and now you don't even have to be someone with the organs that, do that. I'm sure it doesn't feel good for ladies to get kicked in the groin either, to be honest. But nonetheless, that was the best, the way that I could explain that feeling. And then just the going in. What do you do, Josh, when you've been hit in the groin by an inanimate object or been kicked? What's the first thing that you do?
I don't know, probably curse.
You curse. And I mean, usually you just kind of fold over, right, into the fetal position, maybe lay on the ground, that sort of thing. And right when that moment happens, right when that oh shit moment happens, that's exactly what I felt like I wanted to do. And so that's the best way that I could describe it.
It is certainly an apt way to describe it. Jack, you have the piece of paper that has games 70 to 61. I'd like you to flip that over and take a look at it. And yep, that's the one. Take a look at them and as a nice little tease for what we have to come. In particular, take a look at number 66 and think about that pain that everybody had when that game unfolded for Nebraska a handful of years ago. And that is all the way down at number 66.
Wow, that's concerning. That's concerning. I mean, and then 65 too, it was one that we've already referenced here at this point. To be honest, I'm a little surprised that wasn't a little bit higher as well. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I mean... Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, 69. Geez.
Nice.
Yeah.
We got some pain
if
coming.
These are in the 60s, wow.
Yeah.
There's a few of these that I have very, very upsetting memories of.
Yeah, so coming up over the course of the next 8 episodes, we're gonna go in groups of 10 until we get to the top 10. Then we're gonna do a couple of groups of 5, and we will unpack these games and what happened and your feelings all of these years later. Jack Mitchell, thank you for joining us, and thank you for giving us the groin kick as a phrase, I guess.
You're welcome.